Good morning. It's October 20th, 2025. Hmm. Welcome to Collision Coffee Talk. We had an interesting week last week. I got to get up to New Jersey and the New York area for very briefly. And it was also a conference week, so there was all of that going on, which means I don't have a ton to really kind of cover over the um, next hour or so, but there are some really neat things that we probably need to get to and have some conversations on. So, we're going to talk about the insurance claim conference that took place last week out in Vegas, and some of the interesting things that come when you go to insurance claims conferences. We're going to talk about State Farm and Elitek and sort of pricing agreements and what's going on that front, and some interesting, I guess, complaints is a good way to put it, that's out there. Alcohol in the collision repair industry. So that's always a really good topic to kind of cover for a little bit. Liberty Mutual and premeditated bad faith, which is always really interesting when these situations seem to pop up, and they're popping up more and more frequently here as we get into 2025. We're going to talk about a new service announcement from Collision Hub. It's kind of fun. This is what happens when I do actually fly into. Um, so I flew into Newark, which to me is basically New York. I mean, like I can throw a rock and hit Manhattan or whatever. So I don't like driving in that area of the country. I'm from Arkansas, and our version of a rush hour traffic jam is way different than what they have on the East Coast. So I'm very thankful that Larry always takes time to come and pick me up from the airport, and drove me around. But when we get stuck in traffic together, we come up with some interesting ideas for new services for Collision Hub. So I'm really happy to announce one of those today. We're going to talk about the AAA study on nighttime pedestrian safety systems, and sort of what that means. And then our new C20 group for ADAS kicks off tonight. Um, and I'm excited about that one. Been working on that one for about a year now. Um, and got some really great people that are going to take the leadership role and sort of running that group, and there'll be lots of guest speakers and some things in there. But that group kicks off tonight. Our new C20 ADAS. It is directed for body shops, so the presentations and everything that we do will be sort of positioned through the lens of a body shop. So not consumer, not ADAS provider, or scanning and calibration company, but we want to present that through the eyes of just the collision repair and what that may mean. So all right, let's talk about ITC 2025. So Insurer Tech is a booming business, absolutely booming. It's double digit billions is what its estimated value is right now. And insurance companies invest in insurer tech companies. Um, I always like to tell people there's a lot of claims conferences for insurance, independent adjusters, et cetera, that go on during the year. That's where you'll learn what's sort of coming. Like you can go to a collision repair conference, and I mean, not to be shady or anything. I mean, you can go to a SEMA, but you're not going to learn anything about what's going on with the insurance companies there. And that's probably the way it should be. You should have a collision repair conference where it should be collision repair, and no body shops are allowed to go. Hint, hint, CIC. And then you have conferences like ITC, and no body shop can just, there's not a single body shop that can go and register for the ITC conference, or the other insurance, the ACE conference. No body shop gets to register for those, and there's reasons for that. And I don't know why the collision repair industry thinks that insurance companies have to be at every meeting, that adds value, that if they weren't there, I've straight up had people tell me that if we didn't invite the insurance, Kristen, we couldn't get sponsors. And I'm thinking, damn, that's a shame, right? The people that are selling stuff to body shops wouldn't show up unless there's an insurer in the room that they thought, whatever. I think that's probably why in the insurance industry, the people we sent to those collision repair conferences weren't really decision makers. They were valuable people, but there was a whole chain of who made the decisions, and it wasn't people in the physical damage department. I'll just tell you that one, right? So, but ITC took place Wednesday, Thursday, Friday out in Vegas. And I always like sort of taking a look at what's going to come out of that. For funsies, just right off the bat, this whole conference is presented by McKinsey and Company, and I'm pretty sure there's not an insurance company. I can state without a doubt, I know Allstate and State Farm are victims of McKinsey and Company. So there's a lot of people that reach out to these special consultants of McKinsey and Company, and always seem to think that there's some outside party that's going to tell you how to do your business a little bit better than you do your business in claims. And a lot of the mess, just the pure circus of where we are right now, is because of not collision, I'm sorry, because of insurance consultants. I'll just say that claims is a mess, and will never ever come back. And after this cycle of presentations in Vegas, it's pretty clear. So I do think that well, I don't think I really wish shops would follow that side of the press or that side of the industry a little bit closer and sort of know what's going on over there, so then you can filter things that you hear on the collision side of things. Um, Collision auto claims are a very, very small to hardly nil part of any claims conference you'll ever go to. There's a lot more severity issues, or let's say loss cost adjustment issues in almost every other line of business. So a lot of things that begin to develop and happen are not because of collision repair. So you learn you're sort of the stepchild. When I first started in claims, auto hated homeowners, and we argued, and homeowners felt they were important, but auto would say we pay for your salary, because we were the most profitable line of business. And so that goes back to probably the same amount of Hatfield and McCoys that exist between body techs and painters inside a body shop. So auto is very, very small. You'll very rarely, if ever, look at an agenda and find something that instantaneously connects to auto claims. And what I also think is really important is for you to look at these conferences and look at who's not speaking, who's not presenting. So things that we give probably a little too much value, or we put too much value on, or we give too much credit to, on the collision repair space, isn't even on the radar or considered on that side. And there's a lot of people on the collision side that would not pass mustard to be a consultant on the other side. So things to pay. But what was really obviously it's insurer tech, and that just means technology, mostly 99% AI. So the use of AI, sort of why it got started in the first place, was a way to discuss and foster all of this. There were some interesting discussions on standardizing data share and opening it up across multiple insurers. And so when we say platforms, multiple insurers, and some value to that. I mean, we've always had NICB was always like a reporting house and a clearing house, and that's sort of how we tried to combat fraud. But now there's technology and AI, and all that stuff can take that further. And so do we have this uniform sharing that starts between everybody? What was one of I guess one of the trends in presentations this past week were how to pair artificial intelligence with a human. I fundamentally believe, and I say this all the time, I post it on LinkedIn, and kind of, kind of goes, I don't want to say it goes over a lot of people's heads, but I'm at that age. I've discovered, of course, this weekend on Facebook, I was called young, which I thought was great, right? But I'm over a certain age, and my friends are grandparents, and all of this thing where I am the old school. So when I started in this industry, you come up and you're young, and you want to I don't want to say fight the old school, but you want to displace them and prove that, hey, we got to get up with the times, and we can't keep doing it the old way. And so you kind of have that. And I now realize that I've transitioned over time to being actually the old guard. I'm one of those. Smart enough to know it's never going to go back. Quite frankly, it couldn't, even if we wanted to. So everybody goes, well, what would you do? What would you fix if you were in charge? The things that I would want to do aren't possible. And so we just know that it's never going to go back to the way it was. It's never going to go back where there's 100% human handling on every file on the side of the insurance industry. And we're probably going to get where there's a lot of that AI functioning on the collision side as well. because we just don't have, I don't want to say just because we don't have the bodies, but we don't have the level of intelligence that we had in the past. And that's not a knock on the people that are working. I'm not saying they're dumber, although MIT says it's making us dumber. But but I'm not saying that, just they're not trained. We don't invest in them the same way as when I got started and when the people who came before me, it was a career. People spent 20, 25, 30 years in claims. And so you invested in them, you trained them, you did a lot before, it was even, I think it was probably 4 or 5 months after you were hired before you were even considered worthy of answering the phone. All of that's changed. And I don't see it going back because there's just no way. The turnover rate is too high. The employee pool of candidates has completely changed out there. And so we do need artificial intelligence in some aspects. We've broken humanity in a certain way where even the computer is a little bit more empathetic than real life people these days. But there was several presentations on how do we pair artificial intelligence with a human. And that's going to be really, really vital in our particular niche of this claims ecosystem, so to speak. I have a friend that's in robotics and artificial intelligence for healthcare, primarily surgeries. Like how are we using robots and AI in patient, not only just diagnosis, but in these robotic surgeries, and it's really cool. And there's a surgeon that stands with the robot surgeon, and that way, if something happens, they can jump in and really make those intuitive type leaps, or I got to see it. And in some respects, the artificial intelligence can't necessarily see and make those discernments. And that's really kind of what it's going to be like for us, right? So, a couple of presentations that I thought were really interesting were AI and the future of human producers. And when we talk about agency and agency disruption, I really think the days of a field-based agent are over. Consumers don't value that a lot anymore. I do have some friends that are still agents. The agency two was it Agency 2000 program, where they wanted agents to come from a claims background, and you couldn't necessarily inherit your book of business anymore. You had to like get it assigned to you, and you had to pay in and show that you had so much cash. And so there's a lot of old claims people that are agents, and it's just not the same. Agents don't really have any influence or input into the claims process or any of that anymore. And most people they don't come into an office and shop coverage. There's this movement to all online. So, artificial intelligence being able to take applications, intuitively try to sniff out the fraud in applications, the errors in applications, all of that. So all of that disruption of here's something we will probably remove humans from. Agents are very, very agents are expensive. You have to share. It's a very interesting correlation, right? We've talked last week about sort of how manufacturers have displaced the jobber, whether it was paint companies cutting direct deals with MSOs and leaving the jobbers out of that equation, whether it's more online sales for other things from manufacturers and direct shipments versus jobber. But same thing, the insurance companies really that agent is expensive. There's commissions and everything else that you have to share with them, and sort of as they look to raise their profits without reducing their premiums, will agency disappear? And then this last presentation, the getting the AI plus human balance right. Now that's where it's going to be really, really important. Claims is struggling with that, and in a lot of ways, AI was deployed too soon, and they know that. It's not like they made a mistake. They were very aware that a lot of the tooling wasn't quite ready yet. And the best way to put that is the current staffing models and responsibilities, chain, all of that wasn't quite ready for that either. But it's better to go ahead and go and adjust as you go because you'll never have a perfect solution at all. But because of staffing issues, it was like we can't continue the way we are. So we've got to go ahead and start to make that change, and it's going to be painful. As I talk to a lot of claims people, they're very aware of the mistakes that are being made. the things that we look at and we go, you got to be kidding me. They do the same thing. You got to be kidding me. but but it had to be. Now we look at our business as collision repair. We're going to have to bring AI in. There's not a profit model other than, you can say, I can say charge the customer, set your own rates, do that, and we can go to court. But there's a lot of issues with that hold businesses back. And so for most people, you're going to have to completely revamp the way a shop is staffed. And that's going to be new job descriptions. So not new people. It doesn't mean we hire. We don't have the money to hire. So, in fact, we probably need to be cutting a lot of what we would consider admin type positions. So, the things that are non-producers. I believe that you will see parts department managers go away in collision repair. You'll see a lot of other levels sort of start to disappear because there's just not going to be as the profit takes a hit, specifically as State Farm moves forward with what they've got planned in the new contract that's out now, and how that affects everybody, which I'm going to talk about when we get to Elitek. But everybody's going to be needing to think about new job descriptions, new roles, new responsibilities that really sort of allow some artificial intelligence to be used. And we have our own version. Derek at Crytek has come up with some great products through SmartRight. And our approach was always to pair that technology with a superhuman. So I just didn't want any human. I wanted a superhuman, your above average estimator that could really work with software to make it sure it's putting out the best product. And that's done really well. There's been a lot of headaches along the way and feedback, and sometimes it makes big mistakes and you have to fix it. But they're really, as we move forward, the solution for us is going to be that human. I've always said claims is a human business. It's not a software business. There will always be differences. Two cars hitting a wall at the same speed are going to wreck completely different. Um, and that's going to always sort of require a human to step in and oversee that. And it was really interesting to me to see the insurance companies in their conference last week talking about how we're going to pair up the right human with the technology. Lots of lawsuits against insurance companies right now for the use of AI, and that will continue. Every year there is, so the insurance companies love to invest in Insurer tech. And so there's always a presentation that's kind of like Shark Tank, where you go in and people pitch their new businesses. And so State Farm sponsors that, and has been since 2022. So that's always a really interesting part of that week, is to figure out, what these new startup businesses are. There's been some great startups come out of it. I've got some friends that are on their second or third startup to come out of that. They're serial builders. And I think those are some really, really cool roles. But definitely you can click in. Obviously, this conference has come to pass. But you definitely can take a look at what's going to be happening next year, and then take a look at all the other conferences. Okay, alcohol in the collision repair industry. I've not been I've not hid the fact that, growing up as a kid, my body shop and my dad would have these parties, and we'd have 200 insurance people at the house, and then every Christmas we'd go give decorative canisters of whiskey to people for their Christmas gifts. And it was kind of fun. I had a shopping cart from Kmart, and I can very vividly remember my Kmart shopping cart stuffed with bottles of Jim Beam and pushing them down the aisles of the State Farm Claims Office in North Little Rock, Arkansas, as we dropped gifts off at people's desk. It was wonderful. So we used to joke that some of our best painters, that you could never have a drug and alcohol testing process in a body shop. You'd lose half your good employees. So this was really interesting to watch this technology sort of come up, where the prototype, and it's been unveiled and it's tested it and it works. And it's basically, it's a breathalyzer built into the car, like a screen that's like with the steering wheel. And they build that in with the car. And all I could think of when I was reading this was how many of us in our careers have had a car come into the shop where the person has previously been arrested for a DUI, DWI, etc., and they had the breathalyzer that was court ordered installed in their car. And it was a pain in the ass to have to start that car and move it around the shop, right? And to think that if NHTSA ever made this like mandatory, like right now we're dealing with mandatory ADAS production in every car sold in the United States. It's got to have a backup camera. It's got to have, claim mitigation braking and sort of all those ADAS stuff that's becoming standardized. But could you imagine this being standardized? Like having to have basically a breathalyzer on every car and then having that in the body shop. And could you put it in a service mode where we wouldn't have to do that if it was in the shop? So I think it's interesting when we look at there's tragedy there. There is a contribution to our overall fatality there, but do we change the way something is made for everybody because of a particular segment of a or a stat that we want to change? And will that continue to happen? Will we continue to put laws into effect that change the way the car is made? That then we've got to figure out how to fix that stuff when it comes into the shop. And then here's another thing that I'm going to be legally liable for in a repair. And as I sit and watch this, kind of evolve, it's sort of like the AI discussion, or we will have to figure out how to incorporate artificial intelligence into the side of it on collision repair. But the OEs and all of these startups and all of these people that continue to sort of invent and evolve what they think or how they think a car should interact with society, you sometimes wonder, are they thinking about how or what we're going to have to do with that creation? Like it's not a one and done, throw it away. Nobody could afford that. So we're definitely always going to be doing some sort of repair. Okay, let's talk about there is an uptick of conversations online around insurance and their ADAS agreements. So I hinted at it a little bit last week with what we had seen with 3M and the conversation about buying things from 3M and 3M, entering whether, with what State Farm was going to do, jumping into paint agreements and material agreements above and beyond ADAS. So this situation had come up in which there was a discrepancy. So we know that the insurers, all of them basically now, because Geico tested the waters, did the whole Aztec thing. The insurance, I don't say the insurance, the industry didn't lose their mind, refuse and throw all of Geico out. And so when the dust settled, which you had a couple of people, saying some things at an industry mic, and then I think openly across the world, I was probably the only one screaming the loudest about this is a problem. I remember, is it 2018? I pitched a fit in the middle of SEMA between Honda and CCC cutting an agreement, and I was like, you don't understand what this is going to do, the trickle down effects of what this will do. And so here we are, we're in the trickle down effects of people trying to have controlled access, or I won't say just controlled pricing, but people thought that ADAS and scanning was a big blue ocean. And if you could get an insurer agreement, you're going to make all of the money in the world. And so as people sort of raced to the bottom of that, you eventually had an insurer go, great, let's make an agreement. To think that an insurance company jumps over the actual user of the service. So body shops, you call, you schedule, you do this, but we had a precedent with Safelite as well, right? So all of this shit, I can say that, can I? I don't know, it's early. All of this crap that would come out and you guys would go, well, that's not that bad. I mean, it's just glass. It's whatever. It's just ADAS. It's not that bad. What you allow will only get worse. That's just what you have to understand. So here we were, with everybody, Insurer after Geico, making their own agreement. And State Farm went out and made pricing agreements. And there's multiple people that are subject to this, that are part of this pricing agreement. ProTech, Elitek, a couple of others out there. And apparently they made a pricing model built off the 22 buckets or whatever that CCC had come up with, which is like, wow, gee, isn't that cute how that all worked out together? And then there's levels. It's interesting to the if you look at the perfect, it's the best way. I guess the utopian version of how that would work was we've got this rules engine. This rules engine opus tells us what we think the car needs. Those things will have categories, whether they're level one, two, threes, or whatever, and the levels will have pricings, and then it'll be really fixed, and we won't have a problem. Sounded good, right? Then when it actually gets out into the real world, and you have body shops and adjusters going back and forth with each other, it's not working at all, and there are huge discrepancies on things. So this one was really interesting. Customer called um, the shop we knew as well, so we know the shop. We know the customer was concerned because this vehicle was teetering on total loss. The shop called for a scanning and calibration quote. Here's the car, here's the damages, here's what's hit. I need to know what needs to be done. And they were returned an estimate. And that estimate was $3,138.87. Car's a total, right? It's a total. It was a total from the other side of the parking lot. But you know what it's like when you're going back and forth. The adjuster from State Farm gets the whole I guess estimate, sublet, whatever, calls the shop back and says it's only going to be $500 for all that. Shop's like, it's total anyway, I don't care. But where are you getting that from? Because this is your vendor that you selected. That's the pricing that they had. Then they basically tell the shop that they're going to call State Farm Corporate, and State Farm Corporate will call Elitek Corporate and put Elitek in their place, and there'll be a $500 invoice coming, which that was interesting. But if the scans and calibrations are only 500, then now the car's not a total. So we're not just arguing over. I was trying to, so I did get involved in this, and I got extremely frustrated in the process. I don't care what you want to do for free as long as you're doing it. Like if you want to like do every third calibration free, cool, that's your business model. I'm okay with it. But I do want to know that it's all still going to get done, and then that whatever the pricing is, then we can, have a discussion and go from there. If that's what you want to do, if that's your business model, if you've decided you can take $3,000 worth of stuff and do it for $500, man, that's all you. I'm all for it. But we're in the middle of a discrepancy over repair or total, and I have an insurer or their adjuster hinging the entire decision on a car now being repairable that should be a total loss on your invoice. What became of this that bothered me was there was a feeling of more protection and service to State Farm than there was to this customer and the shop. So my questions were pretty plain. Why is there a difference? Well, it's not $500. Okay, great. It's not $500. What is it? Well, it's not going to be that, but it's not going to be as much as, okay, great. What is it? Like, just spit it the hell out. Just tell me what it's going to be. Along the way, I got a story about why the first invoice was higher was because the shop had requested a bunch of things that weren't necessarily needed, but had been requested. Okay, I can, you think about, I often review ADAS bills where there are things on there that weren't needed. The car wasn't equipped with that certain piece of hardware, typically, is what I run into. So originally I can be like, well, okay, well, what was it? What were some of the things the shop asked for specifically to be included that were not needed? Never would get a straight answer, never would get a straight answer. I finally get the revised invoice, and I'm like, great. But I also get a conversation with the local person who then eventually agrees that no, the shop had never asked for anything special. The shop had just asked for hey, tell me how much this is going to be. So I get the revise. So what you're looking at, let me put this back up for you guys to see it if you're watching the video version. The left-hand side of your screen is the invoice that was originally sent to the shop when they requested it, that was then attached and said, now this vehicle is a total loss. Here's the collision damage. Here's the scanning and calibrations. The adjuster stated they had a different invoice, but wouldn't share it. So I don't know what the farm actually has or didn't have. It would not be uncommon for an adjuster to lie and say that they had something they didn't have. and then say, well, I can't show it to you because it's our proprietary work file product, whatever. I asked specifically if there was another invoice that had been sent directly to the insurer. I was told no. Um, but I do have the insurer telling me there was lots of conversations. There was never a conversation. So we have a period of about a week where the shop was not contacted at all. In fact, the shop didn't get contacted until I specifically said, how about you call and explain it to them? Right? That'd be really nice, right? There, this car's a total. I got a customer. She's in limbo. She's doing all these things. And right now, the central hangup point has become your damn invoice. Like we, if it is what it is, but then we can move on to different negotiating points. But right now, this is a hill that the farm's wanting to die on, and we just need a yes or a no. Um, I don't mind whatever decision you make, just freaking make it and own it instead of like, running around. So I finally get the second one. The one on the right is the revised, that was confirmed to be the official invoice based on State Farm pricing. When I get that invoice, the only thing that were on the originals that are not on the secondary invoice was a fuel surge charge of $5 and a service information access fee of $35. So those wouldn't have been things the shop would have asked to have included. Those would appear to me to be common default charges, right? Like hazardous waste or corrosion protection or car cover or whatever. Those seem to be two normal things. I can very much understand that if you've cut some national agreement, those are probably a couple of things that you've agreed to waive. But now all of the stuff that was originally on the list that had to be done had to get recategorized to meet SF, State Farm's charges, whatever the agreed amount were. And so as we go through them, the static calibration of radar cruise control decreased on the first invoice. It was like 465 or 485, 465, and then reduced to 400. Okay. The stagnant calibration of the forward recognition cameras also reduced. On the original, they were 372, reduced to 300. What's interesting is the seat calibration was actually more. So on the first estimate, $77 went up to what appears to be $100. The parking assist was 465 on the first estimate, and then parking assist was dropped to $150. And then also the steering angle sensor dropped as well. It was originally 145 and dropped to 100. So overall, you're talking, what are we talking here? 800 and something bucks. By the time this all gets, is $800 difference between the two. How it became such an involved, drawn out, defensive process was beyond me. Like it was very clear that one of the parties in the conversation put more importance on State Farm than they did on the shop that would actually had been the ones hiring them. So State Farm isn't hiring you. there's multiple people in the program that agree to pricing or whatever. They're also testing other products and other things that'll probably wipe this out very soon as well. But the whole concept of we're going to charge this one way, and then as soon as we know there's difference, some shops have sent me emails that there's drastic differences, not as big as this one. What did this one turn out the way it did because I was involved? Was the defensiveness because I was involved or whatever? I'm still not sure why all of that time there was no conversation or communication with the shop. The vehicle did eventually total, but it took another couple of weeks or so because State Farm wanted to die. State Farm continued to die on the hill that it wasn't 2283 either. But it did get totaled. But in the process of all of that, obviously storage charges and everything else. And then now we have a total loss problem of wanting to abandon salvage and just other things. My biggest thing in life is if it feels icky, don't do it. Like if you want to make a decision and you want to say, we agreed to this pricing and it's these things and this is what we're going to charge, great. If you think you can make money, doing that for $800 less than what you were charging because you're going to make it up in volume or whatever you've told. Great. Just own it. Right. Like, I don't need a story about being the shop wanting to request, the shop requested this, and this wasn't our fault. It was the shop's fault. And I don't need a story like that. Just go, yep, this is the pricing model and we agree to it. And this is the new, we weren't aware when the shop first called that it was a State Farm claim, but now that we're aware of the State Farm claim, this would be the new pricing. That would cause so much less confusion. There's a lot that we need on the front end that we can't just wait until the car's done to, and then there's an assignment made. And I know that's what people like, well, the ideal way to handle this would have been just to do it all through CCC. Well, I don't want to do it all through CCC, and I'm not on the DRP program. So I guess that statement was trying to explain to me that had it been a DRP claim, there would have been magic and smoke in the back end, and it wouldn't have had to be done this way. But I don't want to be on the DRP program. So come up with a real way that we can make this work without having to have a lot of friction and causing a lot of mm, trouble for the customer. I mean, from the customer's perspective, the vehicle owner, you have a shop that's trying to write an estimate. They're not going to fix this car. They know it's a total. They're going to have this, whatever. And then I have an adjuster over here going, well, we're going to call corporate and we'll make them change their invoice. And I'm thinking, man, not worth it. Like, as an independent business, if I had an adjusters, field level adjusters, um, telling body shops and customers that they would make other corporations change their estimates to be whatever amount they wanted to pay, I wouldn't want to be a part of that insurance company's program, right? Because ultimately the liability would lie with the repair. I am happy that I see seatbelt inspections and all of that on this invoice. State Farm did like to say that they think that stuff should be included, so I'm happy to see it as part of the invoice. What I was really a little concerned with is when I read, and it's on both estimates, so that didn't change really, where it says perform airbag component inspection, and it includes disassembly and reassembly of trim panels to gain access to components, $150. 5 units of that was a total of 750. So the, there's so much involved in what is the non-reusable, and not just like if you have to remove a bag to inspect it and inspect its wiring and its connectors or whatever. There's so much on that is one-time use. And then there's a lot of interior trim components that are one-time use. Specifically, I always tell people when I'm sitting on the inside of the car and I look at something and it says SRS on it or it has airbag stamped in it, that's usually a good indicator that I should double check and make sure it's not one-time use. Some of the clips and hardware would be needed to be replaced. And so I'm wondering, as we outsource that to a third party, do you, as a body shop, do you really want a third party vendor coming in and disassembling the interior to do all of that? Like, do you trust them? Or is it even done? I mean, like, I'm sitting here thinking of some of the services I've sat in my car and watched the little mobile vans do, and they didn't remove a single piece of interior trim whatsoever. And so, that's part of, I think, part of all the things that we're going to talk about and coming up. But I see more and more complaints I'm getting direct email complaints, and then I'm seeing posting online where there's just so much confusion over what needs to be done to the car versus what these outside deals between these third parties with insurers have agreed to do. And are we capturing and doing everything we need to do? And that's part of why we have that new C20 group that's going to start tonight, is that these are the conversations I want to have. I want to be able to bring this stuff and for us to look at it and tell you how to navigate it and tell you what questions you should ask, how to get the customer involved, what are some things to do. We've got a calibration company that's going to be part of that group. And hey, we run into this too, or here are the things that we say it needs to be done. And an insurance adjuster calls us and says, no, we're not paying for that. So How do you talk through that? And then invoices, whatever. If you're having issues between what you know the procedures say need to be done to the car and what a third party who has entered into a separate agreement with an insurer is saying needs to be done to the car, um, feel free to share those. We'd love to take a look. I'd also love to take a look at running that through the Opus map system and see what Opus says. And if they're even keeping, I think one of the biggest complaints I get right now is that State Farm isn't following the map. So they mandated Opus map and then they're not even following it. So I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But more and more, any of this that you have, it's going to become very important that we are sort of I guess, watchdogging some of these third party agreements that insurance companies and vendors are making because you're kind of stuck with it. Even I always, you've learned through the ADAS thing that it's not just about the pricing per se, like, and it's not just for DRPs. So, they made us, some people make say, oh, this is just for our DRP shops. And we all know that pricing and that model and that method is going to end up affecting us because they're just going to call the customer and say, well, we can get it done for this. And so we're not going to pay any more than that. This one was really interesting. I thought we would have a little quick discussion on what's called premeditated bad faith. Um, Humans will always try. I always say if you give a human a goal that has a punishment more than a financial incentive, but if you give a human a goal, they will blow your mind at all of the ways that they will try to achieve that goal through the least amount of friction. We have lots of goals out there right now around severity on total losses for insurers trying to have the average total loss only be a certain dollar amount. And at the same time, we have an industry that can't not make money on total losses. Total losses must be a revenue stream. It must be a profitable revenue stream, specifically if they're going to become 47% of reported claims. So all of us, when we talk about this reorganization of the shop, new job duties, new descriptions, new whatever, we're going to have to make money on the totals so that we can use that money to keep the shop running for repairables. Like it's not just a matter of there's a misconception um, from insurance companies as well as shop owners because of the way we've paid and ran this business for so long that well if I don't fix the car I don't lose any money, right? If I don't, whatever, we lose money on everything every day. Operating expenses are what they are. I could not have a single car come in the shop and I'm still going to have operating expenses, and so I can't lessen my revenue and maintain my operation. So if more cars become total losses, that can't just be a loss of revenue. We can only survive by bringing money in. But anyway, let's talk about premeditated bad faith because this one's cracking me up. There's a lot of, as I'm watching, whether it's deducting of charges from total loss settlements or abandonment or whatever. All right, this email is from October 3rd, 2025. And it basically says, so our date of loss was July 9th. It appears as though from this communication that our FNOL August 10th, so our first notice of loss, basically you have Liberty Mutual, the insurance company, asking the shop to negotiate their charges. The shop's response is, hey, the only thing that we can really do is we'll change our start date on storage. Because like she stated in a previous email, August 10th was when she made the claim. So we will start our storage on Monday, August 11th. We will credit 11 days on our bill. Obviously, you drop the ball. If we don't get an agreement on this, so a lot of our shops will, when there's a problem, will sort of like pause charges. Hey, while we're working this out, I'm not going to keep running the bill up on you. Let's just, here it is. But there's going to be a cutoff date. You got to make a decision by this. And so on August 3rd, they were told, hey, this is the deal. You guys really dropped the ball on this. If we can get this all handled by December 6th or October 6th, there'll be no more charges. But if not, then we're going to resume the charges on that day. The FNOL, I don't technically know. I'm just going off of what the chain of emails is between this. So we have on October 3rd, we have had the adjuster ask for negotiation. We've had the shop respond and say that they'll knock down like 11 days of storage. And the shop's requested charges at that time were $9,691. And a lot of people just look at that number and go, oh my God, no, can't, that's just too much. That's running up my premiums. all the other stupid crap people in this industry. I have never had an adjuster that worried about one of their raises running up people's premiums. I've never had an agent worry that one of their commissions was running up premium. It only seems to be body shop people worried about what other body shops are charging to worries about what's running up premium. But so $9,691 was the fee. Okay, we're knocking along. So what the adjuster writes back and says, what's the total? Shop gives them the total. Within another hour or so, the adjuster writes back and says, thank you. Copart will contact you promptly to schedule pickup. Now, the shop had asked that please be there Monday because we're going to be closed on Tuesday. And that's the email. They're going to be there. They're going to contact you promptly. It's all going to be good. Now, October 3rd, all of this happens on the same day. October 3rd was a Friday. Pretty good, right? All right. So on October 10th, shop gets a notice from Wilbur. Now, Wilbur, I expect more of you than this because typically, let's say when you make an assignment to a subro company, which is basically what Wilbur is, it's a subro collections agency, and you hand them your file. Typically, they're going to have to go through the file, get all the background information, make an assessment on because they're going to be sort of liable for the recovery or whatever contract. Sometimes it's a fee, sometimes it's a percentage, whatever they've done, they're going to have to be responsible. So there's a review process. For a car to be talked about on Friday the 3rd, close to the end of business, be picked up on a Monday, so that would be the 6th. And by the end of that week, the shop already has a collection mail from Wilbur, tells me everything was premeditated before the 3rd or on the 3rd. Like just you did no fighting, you did no kickback, you did no counter negotiation with the shop. You just said, okay, we'll be by to pick it up. That's bad faith. Like, there is all this conniving going on to try to figure out how to get possession of vehicles without having to have tough conversations or enter into disagreements. And everybody thinks they're just being slick. I'm going to do it this way and charge these people, and I'll pick it up from the shop, but then I'll deduct the charges from the customer, or I'll just go ahead and pay and then I'll cancel a check. I have so many canceled checks after vehicles have been picked up, or now this one. So there was conversation. I don't see any adjusters making any leaps of service on their own. So I'm gonna pretty much determine management was involved in here as well. So now Wilbur is claiming that they represent Liberty Mutual and that Liberty overpaid by $7,570. So Liberty is saying that they felt out of the 9,691 that they only owed 2,121 of that. Why didn't you say that back on October 3rd when you were going back and forth? Because for me to get the file referred to you, for you to accept it, for you to review it, and then for you to decide what you're going to forward to the shop, boy, y'all did that awful fast. So it wasn't like you thought later, or this adjuster thought later on a Friday on October 3rd, God, I think I'm overpaying. You know what? I'm going to get some money back. So what's the premeditated part of that? Here they go through this. Here's what I found interesting. And thankfully, typically when you send files to subrogation, you attach your payment history. That's more common for insurer to insurer subrogation. You send the sheet where it has your checks on it. So the Liberty and Mutual people did that and sent it. But here's what's really interesting. If we go back to FNOL, if we go back to when this claim was, we know the claim loss was July 9th. The customer clearly used their roadside assistance coverage because there's a payment to Cross Country Motor Club, which is roadside assistance. Look at the date of that payment. Liberty Mutual knew they had a claim. On issue date was August 1 of 2025. On August 1 of 2025, you wrote a roadside assistance reimbursement. So you knew you had a claim. You knew it was covered. You knew that it was going to be a collision loss or whatever because you issued the damn payment, $1,390.20. That seems like a really high roadside assistance bill if you ask me, but I mean, okay. but you issued a payment to the roadside assist on August 1st. You didn't bother to call the shop until and start talking to them about their fees until October 3rd, but you had paid Toyota Financial Services on October 2nd. You paid and knew good well what you were about to do to try to get possession of that car and figure out a way for that not to hurt you. The other side of this that I always tell people about is when we start thinking about those duties, we talk about those fiduciary duties an insurance company has. That language in a policy doesn't just sort of stand alone. There's all of these expectations and assumptions because it's a one-way contract, right? The customer doesn't get to have they don't get to have input in the policy language. So having language about we'll pay a loss this way or we're entitled to salvage or any of that doesn't necessarily mean that you just get to do whatever you want to do to try to get it. So this particular customer has a contract. That contract was with the body shop. The customer owes all the fees. If the insurer pre October 3rd had no intentions of paying all of those, then that should have been communicated. Because we kind of don't know what Wilbur's going to do in that referral to them. Wilbur is collections, subrogation. Wilbur does have staff attorneys in their operation. Funny that they've moved to Bloomington. That isn't lost on me either. But they have that services. So if Wilbur, on behalf of Liberty Mutual, decided to pursue legal action to force the repayment of $7,000 or something worth of whatever, in the contract, it triggers a couple of things. One, the customer is liable for it. And two, the customer is also liable for any legal fees that result out of the action of an insurer. And when you do that, Liberty Mutual, you've now exposed your customer not only to a financial detriment, but to a legal detriment of being served, of also having to pay the shop's attorney's fees. So they're gonna get the bills shoved back on them. This $7,000 that you think you want is just gonna go. Somebody owes it, right? You don't like it. I don't give a crap. Somebody's going to pay me. But you did this all secretively and with intent. Like there was like some maliciousness to your plan of we're just going to write this check. We'll go get the car. You paid her a day before. You paid off the lien holder plus the balance to the policy holder there. You paid all of that off the day before. And then you immediately sent that over to Wilbur. From the timeline, I think it went on Friday. I think it went as soon as you knew the numbers, you had already had a predetermined amount that you felt you wanted to pay. And I think you sent it off. I don't think there's any way you sent that on a Monday after you got the car or a Tuesday. And a subro company responded that fast. There used to be, and there may not be even more. There used to be a review process where you got those claims in and you looked to make sure that what the adjuster had sent you for collection was legitimately collectible, right? So that's a fast turnaround time for that. So maybe now Wilbur just takes whatever and doesn't even ask any questions and just instantly sends off the letters. I don't know. I keep asking Wilbur to respond. They don't. I'm never expecting that they're going to. But the timeline just from the check sheet just reaffirms that this was conniving. This was manipulation. This was trying to avoid. You didn't want to have a conversation with the shop. You knew what the shop was going to say. The shop had already negotiated down and done some great things. And so you just skipped it. But you didn't explain it to the customer either. And now what? After Wilbur, does Wilbur just walk away and you guys write it off? Or does Wilbur proceed? If they proceed, look at where you're going to trigger all the emotional distress, financial distress, legal distress that you're going to cause the customer. And that really kind of comes at the heart of bad faith. I always say, we talked in the class. So 2 weeks ago, we had an add-on extra. So, the coffee talk thing is free. And we said, hey, for $10, if you want to join, and we're going to have a deep discussion on the Chadwick versus State Farm thing and one other thing that we did a deep discussion on. And in there, we had people that 25, 30 years of claims experience. And we talked about a case where sued for bad faith. And our policy was always just don't do anything icky, right? If your head and your heart and your mind are all in the right place, you're going to make mistakes, and you're entitled to make mistakes. We all do. We we have differing opinions of expert reports or whatever that is, but you can't be malicious. And so if you always just do the right thing, you may be wrong, but it won't be colossal. So we got sued for bad faith. Very large amount of the loss was a big loss. Went to trial. And the whole trial was like 3 days. Depositions were 2 days a piece for people. It was long depositions. The jury comes back and finds us guilty of bad faith. Like I don't like to lose, period, at all. But they ruled that we had ultimately paid the claim correctly. We just didn't do it in the right way. Like there was some mistakes, and that we hadn't taken the customer's best interest at heart at all of them. And so we lost and we're guilty of bad faith. But because the jury decided that the customer really didn't have a financial loss, their award was $1. Great victory, sure. Still, there was a lot of anger because you're like I didn't. I feel like we go back to that the movie. I didn't do anything wrong. It's not fair. I didn't do anything wrong. So that's you can be guilty of bad faith for that. So you always want to do the right thing. You want to have yourself in the right space. This isn't doing the right thing intentionally. This just is icky. If you knew that you thought you only owed 2,000, you should have had that conversation. Should have had that conversation specifically with the customer. That shouldn't have been something that was held back. I know that you think, oh, this is the coward's way to do it. You don't have to have that conversation with the shop or the customer, and you don't, everybody looks to avoid confrontation or difficult conversations. And this I won't have to do it. Wilbur will have to do it. But if Wilbur proceeds and does something other than sends an email, and they've got this letter and email, the shop will have their attorney write back and go, no, we don't owe anything. Now what? Right? Do they close the file and send it back to Liberty Mutual, or is part of their agreement with Liberty Mutual that they'll process them through court? If you go to Wilbur's website, it says we'll go to court for you. Bring it, right? Like that contract is pretty ironclad. This also just reminds me, it's every body shop across the country. If you're listening to this, if you have a customer one more day sign an authorization to repair and a direction to pay, you deserve everything that's coming to you. Like I mean, for the past 5 years at least, we've been screaming to the top of the mountain. You have got to have a services agreement contract with the customer. It can't just be an authorization to repair. There are a lot of them out there. We have on our website, we have one that was created by attorney Erica Eversman. She's made that available. She's even done speeches at SEMA that you can go on YouTube and watch, where she talks about contracts and the reasons why we have them. You're going to need this. If you don't have a good contract, your customer will become a victim because you didn't set it up where there was a real duty owed by the insurer, and it's going to let them get out of some things. So don't go another day. You don't have to get it from me. If you're listening to this and you're like, I'd rather cut off my right arm than do business with Kristen or Collision Hub, I can completely understand that. I would rather cut off my right arm than do business with Sherwin-Williams. Oh, and a couple of other companies, but if you just get it from somebody, there's 1,000 shops out there that have the right paperwork. Put a post online. Just figure out a way to get it. We cannot go any further. Well, this is what happens when I ride in a car through rush hour traffic with Larry Montanez. So this guy's got a business, and the company is called OCDA, and workers can file complaints against their bosses with him anonymously. So you call this guy and you go, I hate my boss, and here's why I hate my boss, and here's all the things that are wrong with my workplace. Well, like we've all been in HR long enough to know that nothing ever is anonymous, right? And everybody goes, no, 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 I have an open door policy. The hell you do. Sometimes stating your truth or what's bothering you or whatever has a backlash on you. So I think this is great because it says you complain, and then he'll show up at the workplace and he'll curse them out on your behalf, and he'll read your complaint. All right, look, Larry and I are not going to show up at anybody's workplace. I don't have enough bail money for that. Like I don't. It would be funny. I could probably like do like an undercover boss or undercover cop kind of thing or whatever. But here's what we're going to do. If you have a complaint about anything in this industry, you can complain about me. You can complain about Larry. I think Larry reading complaints about himself would be interesting. But anyway, you can complain about a vendor. You can complain about an adjuster. You can complain about your boss and what's going on. All you got to do is send that complaint to complaint@collisionhub.com. And there's going to be a little small Cash App Venmo thing. Obviously, this guy's got a business. We're not going to do this for free, although it should be funny. And we will take your complaint. We will make it anonymous. We will protect your identity. And then we're going to make videos about those complaints. We will happily communicate your complaints to your employer respectfully. We're not putting it on their Facebook wall. We're not going to post about them. We'll send it to them and go, hey, we received a complaint from within your organization and we wanted to pass it on. I think sometimes if you're worth a damn as a boss, that you probably want to know those things. But the funny ones, because I told Larry, I said, as soon as I make a complaint open, we're going to have all those people that really, really hate us that are going to want to file. And I think it's great. So it's sort of like mean tweets, celebrity mean tweets, where you make people, they made them read the tweets about them. I'll read my own complaints and Larry will read his complaints. But I think Larry's Brooklynese making videos, reading the complaints that people have would be fun. It'd be great TikTok and YouTube material. So we're going to start our own complaint business. So complaint@collisionhub.com. Send it in. We will protect your identity. I don't want anybody to get fired, especially now in today's economy and where it's at. So we'll see where that goes. I know we're going to have I don't know how to work, but I know Larry and I will have a good time at it. All right. AAA just released a new study about nighttime pedestrian safety. Good news, it's up. So AAA study finds pedestrian detection systems are now 60% effective at avoiding collisions at night. So the pedestrian avoidance systems that we had on the market would do great in the daytime. They were historically struggling at night. There's been a lot of work to improve that. There is still some outstanding issues over reflective clothing. And, that reflective clothing, whether you're a jogger or you're a roadside worker or whatever, the lights hit it and it just is like this massive bright, which is great for the human, not so good for the way the AI or not the AI, but the way the algorithm in the car sees some of that. So there's still some work to be done. But as it goes through, if you get in and you want to read deeper on this study, fantastic. It is very interesting when you read them to just really think about what's going on with the car. When we work on a car, we tend to think about metal and structure and paint, and we kind of stop. And then we have to think about all this other stuff on the car now that we can negatively impact through a variety of ways. So not just the physicality of us touching those components or calibrations or scanning or whatever, but the way we fix a car, the paint we use, whether the structure is correct. What do we install? Hey, if we're talking nighttime, then that's on headlamps. So if we go back to lumens and how bright a headlight is and how far that the headlight cast. If we talk about aiming headlamps and why headlamp procedures, when we read them in the OE repair manuals, are very, very specific, and they're definitely not 0.4 or 0.5 to complete. This is why. It's because that you have these systems that are working together. So it's not just one system, one component that makes this particular feature of ADAS or safety work. You have multiple systems that work together to do whatever it needs to do to avoid the accident, to stop, to deploy the airbags, to do all these things. And that's kind of, when you think about them working together. So you have a camera system that has to work with a radar system, and they have to work together to try to figure out maintaining distances, avoiding something in the road, whether that's a pedestrian or a deer or whatever, and then making the vehicle stop. It's working 650 to 950 feet ahead of the vehicle. Now that's huge. So let's think about it. 650 feet is 217 yards. That's two football fields. We used to do a thing for texting and driving, and to just text, I think it was like 5 words. Like, I need you to text these 5 words. In the process of covering those 5 words at 30 something miles an hour, you cover 100 yards. You cover one football field. That's a huge, I mean, I think a lot of us think, oh, I can look up and I'll stop us if we have a wreck. So that's a huge, huge distance. So that's 650 feet is it's two football fields. 950 feet is 317 yards. That's three football fields. So this car I'm working on, whether it's structure, whether it's the paint, whether it's the lights I'm installing, aftermarket headlights versus OEM headlights, that system, the camera plus the radar, are going to interact with each other for up to three football fields. That's crazy to think about. But I don't calibrate something three football fields away. So I don't park a vehicle at the end of an empty airstrip at an airport and put a target 317 yards down the runway and calibrate the car. We calibrate within a certain distance. And so then the algorithm, the math goes, if I can see this here, then it extrapolates that I'll be able to see this at 317 yards. So we go back to Jason Bartonen's example of sighting in your gun. It's deer season, right? So it's close to deer season. I'm going to sight my gun in at 50 or 75 or 100 or whatever. And then if I'm wrong, as that shot gets further out, I will greatly miss my target. So if I get the sight off this much at 75 yards, if I try to shoot something at 300, I'm going to miss that whole thing completely. And that's really what body shops, that's so important, is you're producing something in which everything has to be right so that that can be right, whether it's ADAS compliant paint codes and paint when you're doing bumpers, whether it's structure, you've got everything square so that the angle it sees is right. Because if the rail's off or the quarters mashed in a little bit, then the angle's completely wrong. And so I may calibrate it, but it's not going to see out because the angle's bad. You started from a bad spot, so to speak. When you see this and you think about, I'm football's my thing, right? And you're standing in one end zone looking at the other, and then you go two more times. That's how far this car is going to interact with the world. And what I do has to be right, or people get hurt. That's the thing about ADAS is, so I got a car. I bought a new car. This is crazy. Like, there's something wrong. It's me. It's 100% me. Had a Jeep Cherokee. Totally had an electronic meltdown in May. And I couldn't drive it because if I drove it, it was spontaneously going to burst in flames and possibly burn my house down. It's been at the dealership since May, waiting on a software update that they still don't have. And so I was hoping that last weekend's push of an update where they bricked all the Wranglers was also going to possibly fix mine, but it didn't. So in the meantime, I just went and bought another car, went and bought a Volkswagen. I thought I got a great deal. It had been a holdover, 1 year holdover. So basically it was costing them money to have it on the lot. I stole that thing for a song. It was wonderful. And then Friday night on the way to a football game, ironically, all of the ADAS and the electronics stopped working. I don't have a center screen. The car still drives. I can start it up and drive, and I got headlights and I got turn signals and I got all the standards, which is great because my hybrid didn't do that when it bricked. So I got to go to the dealership. In fact, when I finish this morning and everything's good, I'm going to go sit at the dealership, and I'm sure I'm going to have to leave it and all of those things. But to how sensitive all of that stuff is, and how reliant we get on it. I was trying to leave the ball game Friday night, and I don't have a backup camera now because none of that's working. And I was like, backing up at night, with a backup camera and cross traffic, and you got all these kids running around after a game that have been playing football in the end zone all night long and all that. And it's like, I kind of had a little panic attack. I was a little terrified. I rolled down all my windows and I wanted to be able to hear people scream at me if I was backing over their child. I don't know. But it was just really a lot of how dependent we've become on those systems now. I made my kid's car. He's got a 99 Chevy. I was like, you're not getting anything with any of those conveniences. It's just got air conditioning. That's what you need. So that they would learn to be attentive to the world around them and not just think that ADAS and all this stuff would take care of them, lane departure and all that. Um, and I thought that was making me a really great parent. And then I realized Friday night I'd become dependent on all of those things as well. And so it's very, very important we get these cars back where all of that stuff's working because people are dependent on it, just like I'm depending on it. So that means we're kicking off the ADAS C20 group. Starts tonight. If you're not a member of this group or our other C20 groups, if you're a current member of any C20 group, I will let you in that group tonight so you can give it a test run. If you're a member of our VIPs, well, this is your newest extra meeting you get every month. So it's included. If you're not a member of any of them, but you want to join, you can just email Melanie at collisionhub.com and she'll give you the information for how to get registered. I wanted an ADAS group for people like me. I know that I need to know, but I don't know. And lately, it seems everybody that we're supposed to trust becomes untrustworthy, right? Like for years, Jake was at Aztec, Mike Anderson liked Aztec. So I was like, I like Aztec too, right? Here are two people I trust. I trust Mike, I trust Jake. And if they tell me it's good, it's good. And then that let me down and ended up being a circus and Jake leaves and whatever. I had what I thought was a good understanding with Elitek. I had told a lot of shops, hey, you know what? It is what it is. You got to make a decision. You're probably better off with a third party expert than doing it on your own. And I had recommended some shops when they told me who was in their area of service that Elitek was probably a good option. Now they've let me down based on this interaction I had with them. And I thought, Jesus Christ, if I'm getting treated this way, how does everybody else get treated, right? Or maybe I'm the only one that gets treated that way for whatever reason. But that was a problem. I've worked with ProTech, haven't had a problem with them yet. There's a group out of Chicago I haven't had a problem with yet. OEM calibration, which is James Rodas, Spike, however you want to refer to him. His team's going to be running this for me. So I went through a couple of people that I asked them to lead this thing, and then they came back and said that they wouldn't lead it because they didn't want to be associated with Collision Hub. That if they were a part of my ADAS, that the insurers would punish them for it. And I thought, that's very interesting. Okay, well, thanks. So James, I guess, has heroically agreed or volunteered to run this group. We'll see how long he lasts. But I just wanted a group that spoke to just collision repairs, just from a body shop owner or an estimator's perspective. Like, we're not going to get out there and calibrate those cars. Please God, don't get it. We can't do that. What can we do? What can we not do? What do we need to know about? Because we got to estimate it and we got to make sure that we're getting paid properly. And it's not, as you can see from the issue that we talked about today, it's not just as simple as either running a report through Opus. I've had a stack of things on my desk lately where it's shops, mostly vendors, not shops, but competitive vendors trying to show me how bad Opus is. Opus has made all these mistakes, Kristen. Look at all the stuff that's missing. And I'm like, great, let me look at them. So how do I know as a shop what's right and what's wrong? And then when do I advocate for the right repair? Because clearly everything from headlights to paint to whatever could potentially cause a catastrophic electronic failure of the ADAS systems. So what do I do? How do I even navigate? I don't even know. Shops will call me and go, what do we do? And I go, I don't know. Like I know this. And I tell body shops, you can't know everything. You just have to figure out how to navigate it. I used to tell my adjusters, I don't need you to know how to fix cars. I just need you to be able to have the conversations to navigate the decision-making process. And that's what we're going to do tonight with the C20. We're going to kick that off. We already have the agenda for like the first 6 meetings or the first 4 meetings. So you can kind of know what the topics are. Tonight, we are going to talk about just general ADAS components and what they do, where they're at, so that you can get sort of, if the cars hit here are some things that may be physically impacted. And then we're going to talk about how those things work with each other, because that sometimes is why things get affected in teardown. So it's not that the thing got impacted and was damaged, But because I tore something down and I removed this door handle or this mirror or I had to disconnect the battery, and this system interacts with this system, this is why we have to do that. So we're just going to try to connect those dots a little bit tonight, and answer any questions that anybody has. Our next meeting will be on the 24th of November. And we're going to talk about what it takes to do static calibration. So that static environment. So if somebody tells you that they can come and do the static calibrations at your shop and the vehicle doesn't have to transport anywhere, are they telling you the truth? So we'll talk about some of those. And then we're also going to say what happens when those aren't right. So if you just got, right, like we've got pictures of people calibrating in driveways. I've got a guy that lists himself as a calibration company. He has a shed in one of those storage unit places. It's like 9,000 storage units and you rent them for $100 a month. He's got his ADAS equipment in one of those and he drives the cars over to the storage lot and takes pictures, and you can tell he's at a storage facility and he's just got the vehicle. Well, if you've been in a storage facility, they drain sort of like at a V, so that the water drains away from the storage units and then drains down the middle. So he's not on a level surface. That one was very interesting. December 22nd, we're going to address OEM versus aftermarket tooling. What are the real issues and things that you need to be worried about? You're always going to have people that use aftermarket tooling that tell you it's fine. And then you're going to have people that are the OEM people telling you it's not fine. So we're going to talk about that. And then January 19th, we'll talk about liability and litigation. So there's a lot of lawsuits happening and more are picking up. We went from maybe a couple a year to about 40 or 50 a quarter. And so they're picking up on a rapid scale, and we're going to talk about that. And then we'll have it. So you at least know what our first 4 meetings are going to cover. James is leading it, but by no means is James and his company controlling that. So we'll have lots of guest speakers. We've invited anyone to attend and participate, because I think this is one of those, we got a lot of questions and we need a lot of answers. And I'm about the time I think I've found somebody that I can trust, something happens and then that trust is lost. And so we're going to have to just sort of pick up that, what's the word I'm looking for there? We're just going to have to pick up the pace at education, and we're never going to find that education at a trade show because it's usually pay to play speakers, or obviously the people that have booths are wanting to sell you something. So how do we get around that? All right, last thing that we are going to talk about for the day is tomorrow kicks off the post repair inspection class, the virtual class. I will be teaching for 3 days online. So at least Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you will not be able to get in touch with me and I will not be able to help you out. So that means reach out to Melanie if you have an emergency, or Holly. They're the ones that'll be able to help you. Larry and I will be on this class. So lots of really good information in it. It's 3 days. We know it's going to be 2 full days. We've never done this as a virtual class. We've always taught this as a hands-on class with cars, and we do the post-repair inspections live and all that kind of stuff. It's just too expensive right now for people to take that much time off work to fly in somewhere, and then hotels and airplane expenses and all that. So we're trying this. This is our first virtual class. And as we're going through it, the last day where we go over a closed case, a court case, we typically give everybody a binder and you have all of the court documents in front of you. Can't do that virtually. But that may not take as much time as we thought. So we know we got 2 full days. You may get maybe like the teacher that calls off class on a Thursday and lets you go home early for a long weekend. That may be what happens, but a 3 days of online training on post repair inspections. And I tell everybody, if you're an insurance company, this is great. Because you need to learn how to inspect customers with complaints and manage your DRPs. If you're a body shop, this is great. What do you do when one comes in and you accidentally discover that it's screwed up from a prior repair? That happens. Even if you have no intentions of ever being in the post-repair inspection business, you need to sit through this class and approach that. If you're an independent adjuster, it's a great one for you. If you're an OE, this is a great one for you because you guys decided you wanted certified collision centers. Who's out there deciding if the repair qualities are good? And do you have a process for for doing post repair inspections and reporting them if there are issues. And if you're a body shop, large, national, this one's for you too, because all of you really need to centralize your post repair inspection issues. I meet with people all over the country. I'll go to California and I've got one shop that's got one MSO buying cars back, and I go to another one and they've got the same MSO buying cars back. And at no point do I think corporate is aware of how many are out there. And so if you are a regional or a national MSO, you should have an SOP for handling post repair inspections when they're presented to you. And there should be sort of a centralized process for that so that you don't get surprised. In the court case we're going to go over, that MSO got surprised because you had a local store manager that was taking it personal. So it probably, that one got way out of control and should have never got where it was. But anyway, I get involved in a lot of those where it blows up locally and they call me and they're like, the shop's refusing to buy it back. And I go, hold on, let me make a call. Hey, what's going on here? And typically when I get a hold of somebody at corporate, they're like, we have no idea what you're talking about. Like, we were not aware of this at all. I've got one particular MSO that their in-house counsel just basically says, whenever you get one, call me. I just want to know before anything else goes, like, I want a chance to look at it and decide what we owe or don't owe. Because I always say, man, I'm not telling you you got to pay me. I mean, I got my opinion, you got yours. I appreciate differing opinions as long as we're both aware of each other's opinions. But I appreciate his stance of, I just want to know, and I will look at it. And if we owe it, we owe it. And if I don't think we do, I'll explain what I don't think we owe and why. And it's great. And they're handling them very, very, very well. So I think it's a great class and everybody should be on it. I'm a little biased. I, we're going to find out whether we can teach post-repair inspections virtually or if you got to fly in here and look at cars with us. So everybody have a fantastic week. If you have any questions, well, obviously, I just told you I'm out for 3 days. You can shoot those to Melanie or Holly. So it's just Melanie at Collision Hub or Holly at Collision Hub. If you got a complaint and you want to have your complaint read out loud, post it on YouTube, or if you want us to anonymously deliver your complaint to your employer or vendor of choice, well, then you just need to send that in to complaint@collisionhub.com. And we're going to see if we can have a business that's as fun as this guy on Facebook is having. By the way, you can go read, or you can go watch some of the videos. He does go visit people's businesses. We're not going to do that, but there's some really good videos of him doing that. So everybody have a fantastic day, and we'll see you next Monday on Collision Coffee Talk.